What is up, everybody? Jay the Great here, back with another Naruto related video, and today I have with me once again my good friend Shinobi. Do you want to say hi to the people, Shinobi?
What's going on, guys? Shinobi here.
Yes, sir. And he's also very knowledgeable in Naruto and has his own channel posting his own content. Of course, his channel is in the description. Go show him some love as well. So shout out to him for coming on here. So in today's video, we will be discussing how each Akatsuki duo would perform if they were to each attempt Pain's invasion of Konoha. Firstly, I must give credit where credit's due, and shout out to New Horizons for actually being the first to do this topic and coming up with it, as it is a very good topic to discuss and a very good what if topic overall. So shout out to him. Now, we thought this concept would be interesting to discuss, as many of the Akatsuki, as we know, have several run-ins with several of the Lee Shinobi that actually took part in attempting to defend Konoha from Pain's invasion, and we hope to bring some more light on the scaling of the Akatsuki, especially the members with more obscure scaling. So to establish the parameters for this video before we begin, we will attempt to mimic the series of events of Pain's invasion for each duo as closely as possible, depending upon how each Akatsuki duo respectfully performs in Pain and Konan's position, as well as whether or not they have the ability to actually complete the invasion successfully, with the prerequisite for the video, and for that being obviously successfully capturing Naruto like Pain attempted. The clear battles with Shinobi of note, which include Kakashi, Tsunade, Sakura, etc., and of course the Sage Mode Naruto altercation, if the duo in question gets to that point in the invasion successfully. Additionally, if necessary, other alternate battles may be discussed in more depth with Shinobi that were present during the invasion, such as Shikamaru, Tsunade again, who was the Hokage at the time, etc. This also indicates that the Shinobi that were not present in the original invasion will of course not be present in these hypothetical scenarios either, i.e. Might Guy, Lee, Neji, etc. Finally, we will be giving a percentage chance for each duo respectfully as we conclude our analysis for each duo. But that's about it for the parameters and preface of the video, so with all that out of the way, let's get straight into it. So first up, we have Hidan and Kakazu. So like Pain, they lack the ability and or knowledge to enter Konoha undetected by Konoha's barrier team. So once they enter Konoha, they'd have the entire Leaf Shinobi basically army upon them to defend it. Now, unlike Pain, they wouldn't have the numbers nor the ability to enact a multiple angle attack with missiles, soul extractions, etc., and instead would most likely have one-on-one encounters with multiple Shinobi of note. They would most likely immediately encounter Kakashi, Sakura, Shikamaru, Choji, etc. So to analyze how this duo would perform in this scenario, luckily we have a template to scale them off of, with them actually having an altercation with Kakashi alongside the Inushiko-cho team previously in the narrative. Did you want to start out with the scaling here for Hidan and Kakazu, using that as a template?
Yeah. Thankfully, we do have something to go off of to really grasp the full capabilities of Kakazu and Hidan. And so, like Jay illustrated, upon their entry, they would be met by many Shinobi fully aware that an intruder is upon them once they pass the barrier that engulfs the Leaf Village, if you will. They don't possess the code like Itachi, like Jay said, and this wouldn't be a coup they attack at all, or not at all covert. So even when analyzing Shinobi like Aoba, Raido, Kotetsu, and Izumo, who are tuning, by the way, they're able to land attacks and can at least help delay the movements of Kakazu, for example. With conjunction with more notable Shinobi like Kakashi, for example, this would be a huge obstacle to overcome for this duo. As Jay said, an earlier iteration of Kakashi with only his base Sharingan out was able to evade any cuts or external damage from Hidan that in return would allow Hidan to complete his ritual. Even when faced with Kakazu's steering migraine or large wind-style attacks as a distraction, Hidan cannot close the gap. We also see Hidan succumb to a combination effort from Shikamaru and Asuma that ends up with him being decapitated. So if it wasn't for Kakazu there, Hidan would have been taken out effectively. With Shikamaru, Kakashi, and others like Shikaku, deducing their one-of-a-kind immortal abilities would happen at a very rapid pace. Having the Surah Trap from Izumo, Shikamaru's Shadow Possession, which can last 5 minutes, by the way, would greatly give the Leaf an advantage in this matchup. Having a stronger Kakashi than what we saw initially, could also use Genjutsu or Kamui, which would easily take out someone like Hidan or Kakazu, seeing as Kakashi, in an earlier instance in the series, was able to snipe Deidara off. And so looking at this iteration of Kakashi against these two, Kakashi alone would have great success against the two of them. Kakazu did have a good taijutsu exchange with Kakashi when he was just base Sharingan, but Kakashi didn't utilize Genjutsu. This was a weaker iteration of Kakashi. And so to put that into conjunction with Tsunade and everyone else in the Leaf Village, it would just be way too overwhelming, Kakazu and Hidan alike, to even take Naruto or even battle him in the first place. So, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So to recapitulate the events that Shinobi already did of the Kakazu and Hidan versus Kakashi and Inoshika team altercation, and also to add my own scaling against Steelman. In this altercation, we see Hidan, referring again to the previous altercation Hidan and Kakazu had with Kakashi and company, we see Hidan show physical inferiority to Kakashi, again not being able to land a single scratch on him, as that would be all he would need to perform his ritual, even with Kakazu aiding him at times to attempt to throw off Kakashi's concentration. Hence, Hidan can be at best said to be arbitrarily relative, but inferior to that iteration of base Kakashi, who would be weaker, like Shinobi said, than the iteration in question during this invasion. Now, as for Kakazu, he's able to have a taijutsu exchange with Kakashi with success, like Shinobi said, being able to strike him on multiple occasions, as well as nearly remove his heart and defeat him, if not for Kakashi and Shikamaru's ploy to have Hidan perform the ritual upon one of Kakazu's hearts. Hence, Kakazu can be said to be relative to base Sharingan Kakashi, but superior, to be fair, as it is easier to conclude that Kakazu is more likely to kill Kakashi one-on-one as opposed to the antithesis, given the context of their altercation again. So in this invasion, with a stronger Kakashi, Inoshika team, Sakura, and most likely other Leaf Shinobi quickly upon them, the chances of success for this duo isn't very likely. Kakashi alone with his improved Sharingan and Kamui could relatively easily snipe off Hidan's head, similar to how he sniped off Deidara's arm earlier in the narrative, and Kakazu would be forced to combat several Jonin plus level Shinobi, which would simply be too overwhelming for him given the circumstances and Shinobi present, which include Tsunade, a Hokage and blatant signing level individual, and again Kakashi. To be honest, prior knowledge wouldn't even need to be granted to Konoha, as Kakashi and Shikamaru quite easily deduce the abilities of Hidan and Kakazu with their high IQ and intelligence. Simply put, Hidan and Kakazu lack the caliber and ability to even make a dent in this invasion attempt, and would fall most likely before even Seibo Naruto's arrival, especially if Tsunade chooses to aid in the defense, as her AP theoretically could be enough to shatter all 5 of Kakazu's hearts in a single blow if he were not to be using his diamond armor, as she was even capable of affecting again Madara's perfect Susanoo in the War Arc once using her 100 healing seal. Hence, the chances of success we deduce for this duo is honestly less than 10%, indicating that in a set of infinite scenarios, they would be successful in almost none of them, unfortunately. But did you have any final thoughts for this duo and their performance in this invasion before we move on?
No, I agree completely, honestly. I think Hidan is even less of a factor. It would take literally like Shikamaru and Yamato, for example, to honestly take him out.
Yeah.
And as for Kakazu, as we've already established, Kakashi alone being stronger than the Kakashi that did fight him was relative to some degree. Like Jay said, he almost got taken out by his heart being ripped out, but because of Hidan, that happened. And even after being Raikuri'd, Kakazu saves Hidan from being Raikuri'd from Kakashi as well, kind of demonstrating his caliber of speed at that instance of the series, if you will. So even though impressive during that time, when you really put into context Kakashi and everyone else and Tsunade, these two really don't have a chance, to be honest. So
yeah, exactly. So essentially, again, their chance of success is honestly less than 10%. It's very, very unlikely that they even get past the first phase, which the first phase is getting past Konoha before Naruto's arrival. It's just very unlikely, and they simply lack the ability. So there you guys have it for the first two. I'm sure none of you guys are very surprised by the conclusion. They just are pretty inferior in terms of the combatants that are available at this time. Next up, we have Sasori and Deidara. Now, luckily for us, this next one is far more interesting than the former. Firstly, like Pain, Sasori and Deidara would be unable to enter Konoha without detection, meaning they would be detected as soon as they were to arrive. Now, what makes this even more interesting is the fact that both the Akatsuki members in this duo possess abilities that can affect multiple opponents, even on quite a large scale. And considering how these two fighting character, it is more than likely that Deidara would take to the skies, bombing Konoha like a B-2 bomber would in World War II with his clay bombs, while Sasori would be on the ground causing havoc with his puppets and taking out multiple opponents with his poison if antidotes were not to be present at the time. Now, before the video, me and Shinobi discussed whether or not antidotes for the poison would be available. we came to the conclusion that it isn't unfathomable to conclude that they would be present, as if we were to deduce that because of this scenario, Sasori didn't die from his altercation with Sakura, Sakura would most likely tell Tsunade about the poison, and because of the Akatsuki's threat level, they would most likely concoct more antidotes to have and be available. We deduce that that's certainly possible, and to be quite frank, whether or not antidotes are available would change the odds of success for this duo. I would say at least significantly, because if there's no antidotes available, simply put, Sasori would just poison everyone with poison clouds and or needles and take out the majority of Konoha alongside Deidara's bombs. So that certainly matters. But did you want to add it to that, and to whether or not the antidote would be present here, the poison antidotes?
I mean, yeah, it is interesting because, like, Konoha does host the Nine-Tailed Jinchuriki in Naruto, and Akatsuki are after the Jinchuriki in totality. So it's like, they know that their home is at a threat at all times, if you will. So with Sakura being Tsunade's prodigy or apprentice, if you will, it's more than likely to assume that like Sakura would relay this intel to Tsunade, being that number one, it's a prodigy or apprentice, if you will, and it's about the Akatsuki, which is pretty significant intel to relay. So being that Sakura by herself thinks that Chiyo could concoct an antidote, and Tsunade being the medical ninja that she is, it's more than rational to conclude that they might have antidotes prepped ahead of time.
Yeah.
And that might help save the lives of a lot of people. But to say how much they would have is unquantifiable, because they need certain ingredients that may only hail from the Sand Village, for instance, and things of that nature. So it is something to think about. But in terms of how much it really plays a decidable factor, if you will, it really is up to the shinobi that the antidote goes to in the first place, honestly.
Exactly. So yeah, keep that in mind, folks. We're going to discuss this scaling now, and you're going to kind of see why the antidote doesn't matter too much, I guess you could say in theory, but going on to the scaling here. Firstly, to start out with Deidara. Deidara is shown to essentially stalemate post-Orochimaru absorption Sasuke in a very competitive battle, I might add, showing relativity and speed, even to an extent, as well as the ability to use nanoscopic bombs, underground mines, a small city-level explosion via C0, possibly a blatant city-level explosion if you want to give it that generous benefit of the doubt, and even genjutsu resistance via his training after his humiliation to Itachi. However, due to this stalemate, he is below Prime Saiyan level, as Sasuke, who defeated him, admits inferiority to Orochimaru after Karin questions how he could have been the one to kill Orochimaru given his struggles with Deidara. So essentially, he is implying that even with his current abilities, he deems himself as not capable of defeating Orochimaru, and again, only defeated him prior because of Orochimaru's illness. So that allows us to deem him below Saiyan level, and transitively, Deidara below Prime Saiyan level as well. Now, as far as Sasori, his scaling is certainly more interesting. He is successfully able to slay the third Kazekage in a tough battle, according to him, indicating superiority but relativity to the Kazekage, with Chiyo implying inferiority to him, stating his Iron Sand to be the most feared weapon in the history of the Sand Village, with Chiyo herself being relative to Hanzo, stalemating him on multiple occasions, as we learned in the war arc from her, with Hanzo of course sparing all three younger Sannin conjunctively during the Second Great Shinobi War. Now this, along with Jiraiya's shock of Hanzo's death even in his prime, allows us to deduce that Sasori is actually above Sannin level, again being able to kill an entity in the third Kazekage who is above an individual that spared all three younger Sannin, who was greatly respected by the Sannin. Which again, all just reinforce the claim that Sasori is superior to Prime Sannin level. So hence, with Deidara and Sasori, we have a high Jonin, low Kage level Akatsuki member in Deidara, and a blatant mid Kage level Akatsuki member in Sasori. So to go back to the scenario, Deidara and Sasori would be very difficult to handle, even for the likes of Kakashi and Tsunade, again, with these Akatsuki members being at this level at this point in time. Now again, the antidotes would play a factor here, because if they're not present, and we presuppose they are not, then simply put, most of Konoha will be poisoned and or bombed from above, and simply put, they would pass more than likely the first phase of this invasion due to their caliber and abilities at the end of the day. However, if the antidotes are present, more than likely the antidotes would at bare minimum go to the shinobi of note, including the Hokage and Kakashi, and that would certainly aid them in their chances. However, truth be told, regardless, I think their chances of success is more likely than not, due to, again, especially Sasori's level of caliber being above prime Sannin level, implying that his physical stats are more than likely at least superior to base Tsunade and Kakashi with his Sharingan. I know some people might have a contention with that. Obviously, one of the best win cons for the Konoha side in their defense would be most likely Kakashi's Kamui, as perception speed is above reactionary speeds for most combatants in the Naruto verse. So perhaps you could argue Kakashi snipes Deidara from the skies with his Kamui. That's certainly a possible win con for him. However, he would certainly be very, very busy with Sasori's puppets, poisons, etc., iron sand, if you will, etc. So the chances of success for Sasori can vary depending upon the antidote being present or not, because that will aid Konoha significantly if they can and do have antidotes present at the time. I would also like to add that because their arrival would be unexpected, like Pain's was, as they weren't expecting an invasion to happen at that point in time, these antidotes wouldn't be exactly distributed amongst all shinobi at that point in time. They would have to distribute it while the battle is taking place, and that's going to be tough with Deidara bombing all the buildings in Konoha and Sasori attacking everyone with his puppets. So keep that in mind as well. Even if the antidote is present, there's a chance that it doesn't even reach the shinobi of note in time because they get poisoned before they can take it. Because again, it's very unlikely that they have it on hand with them at any point in time within Konoha. So keep that in mind as well when it comes to the poison. So truth be told, as far as the first phase of this invasion, this duo's caliber is too high and they are simply too dominant for Konoha to handle more than likely at this period in time. Hence, similar to the Pain invasion, Konoha would be at the duo's mercy, with Naruto then arriving with his newly attained Sage mode. But what did you think about the scaling of these two and how they would perform here in this first phase of the invasion?
Yeah, illustrated it perfectly. Just to accentuate that, if I would. Yeah. Like Jay said, the best way to scale Deidara is really to look at his performance against Heavy Sasuke. He and Heavy Sasuke had a very down-to-the-wire engagement that took last-minute decisions from Sasuke constantly to win inevitably. Being as this Sasuke doesn't even scale to a prime iteration of Orochimaru, commented on by Karin after the battle and by Deidara before the battle, Deidara wouldn't scale above anyone higher than Sannin plus, like Stage Mode Naruto, for example. And looking how he would fare against the Leaf, we know that he's blatantly over shinobi like Yamato or other Jonin in the village, and because of his aerial mobility and constant threat of bombs, he is a hard target to take down. Kakashi would be the most worthwhile shinobi to mention this matchup because we did see an earlier iteration snipe down Deidara's arm off while he was running away with Gaara in hand.
Yeah.
Being as he is more powerful here, sniping Deidara would be a lot more feasible, and sniping two of his arms off alone would take him out effectively. But as Jay illustrated, having Sasori with his adequate scaling would make this situation a very unlikely outcome, if you will. So Sasori's a different story, though. With most folks, the common misconception is that because he loses to someone in Sakura of all people, and it's the first Akatsuki member to die, that he is the weakest.
Yeah.
For once, Sasori was facing off with Chiyo and Sakura with movement, and Sasori's will to defeat his own grandmother falters as seen towards the end, with Chiyo remarking how Sasori anticipated her final attack, but was off guard for some reason. Chiyo also remarks how Sasori is the strongest puppet master of all time, even above her prime iteration. And to reinforce this scaling, Sasori took down the third Kazekage, down in what was described as a heated exchange, right? The third was described as not only the strongest Kazekage, but the strongest in his village, and which would include, you guessed it, Prime Chiyo. So, Prime Chiyo stalemated Hanzo on multiple occasions. As we've said earlier, Hanzo gave the Sannin their name, so Sasori definitely scales above any Prime Sannin individually by themselves. And Tsunade is the strongest opponent at that time in the Leaf Village, and so him by himself, he's taking out the village single-handedly. Like Jay said, having the antidotes would be helpful, but they didn't anticipate the attack per se. And even though they would come as an intruder, because of the scaling, they just don't have enough time to distribute them in the first place. So, unfortunately, it would come down to the second phase of the battle.
Yeah, exactly. So, Worth mentioning, like Shinobi did, is the sort of Sasori downplay that we hear all the time. Like you said, with the Sakura fight, people use that as a sort of anti-feat to imply that he's somehow the weakest in the Akatsuki because he, quote-unquote, lost to Sakura. But like Shinobi said, before we move on to the next phase, because I do think it's important to discuss, he, for one, was iterated by Chiyo to be above herself, including her prime iteration, which we already scaled. And two, Sakura had, one, the antidote, which was very crucial because if not for it, her and Chiyo would have died to his hand. And two, had lots of aid from Chiyo's puppet strings, which aided her physical stats as far as speed when combating Sasori. And three, like Shinobi said, he literally gave himself up at the very end due to his parents sort of mentally nerfing him and him sort of giving up in the end. With, again, Chiyo literally stating he should have dodged the last attack and killed us. So he is not at the level of Sakura or base Sakura by any means. He simply had disadvantageous parameters implemented against him with the antidote and with Chiyo aiding someone with the AP of the levels of Sakura. So it wasn't simply just, oh, he lost to Sakura. That's a misrepresentation of what took place, and that's sort of disregarding the actual context and the parameters of that fight. So yeah, Sasori certainly downplayed, and we have to give him some props here. But to move on to the second phase here, which is Naruto's arrival with Sage Mode, it becomes even more interesting. So with us having to draw comparisons and scaling between, of course, Sage Mode Naruto and this duo, did you want to start out with the comparisons here? How would you compare this duo and Sage Mode Naruto here?
Yeah, so as we've already kind of gone over, Deidara doesn't scale to someone like a prime Sannin, if you will.
Yeah.
And we do know Sage Naruto is above someone like Jiraiya. So him one-on-one with Deidara really isn't going to go in favor for Deidara just based off scaling alone. Durability, speed, AP, Naruto definitely takes it. The question really is, how would Sasori fare to Naruto, right?
Yeah.
And when looking at this comparison, Naruto certainly has impressive feats against a Preda, Animal, and Asurapath after Pain unleashes the chaotic Shinra Tensei. We do know as soon as he regains his powers, Pain is able to go toe-to-toe with the Six-Tailed Kurama and also pin down Naruto as a result beforehand. But what is interesting is to try to triangulate Pain's caliber as a shinobi in comparison to the shinobi that Sasori could handle, for example.
Yeah.
With Pain, we do see him in the war arc, white-haired, very extremely fatigued, can barely walk, is still able to react to opponents like V2 Killer B. And I'm not saying this is analogous per se to the Pain invasion, but what is important to take note of is even when extremely fatigued, Pain is not a shinobi to really undermine whatsoever. And so we also have seen Pain, or Nagato rather, very early in the past take on Hanzo with little effort. He doesn't have to pass the Pains, he's way less experienced. And as we've scaled earlier, Sasori is arbitrarily above Hanzo, but not by a gargantuan discrepancy, if you will, right?
Yeah.
So there's just kind of a couple points of reference to see that, like, hey, if Sage Mode Naruto is doing it well against someone of this caliber, then he would do just the same against Sasori, right? So, that's just a couple ways to compare upon that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Again, Steelman, Shinobi's point, because I agree. The first scale Deidara, like you said, when comparing Naruto and Deidara, firstly, Naruto scales above him as he is above even the likes of imperfect Sage Mode Jiraiya, with, again, like Shinobi said and I have said previously, Deidara not even being at prime Saiyan level, struggling with heavy Sasuke. This indicates that in battle, Naruto's speed and enhanced physicality would serve as too much for someone of Deidara's caliber. However, when comparing Sasori and Sage Mode Naruto, it is certainly more interesting, like Shinobi already implied. Sasori, again, was capable of killing the strongest Kazekage ever at the time, which puts him above arbitrarily prime Saiyan level. However, what gives Naruto the edge over Sasori, physical stats-wise, like Shinobi implied, is he is even able to combat Tendo Pain, who, even highly fatigued, weaker than the Tendo that fought Naruto, was able to outrun and combat even Six Tails Naruto, with Sasori simply never displaying in his entire career feats on this level. And to even add more on top of that, we know the AP of just Sakura alone was enough to shatter his puppets in their entirety, with Tendo Pain being able to tank shots from Six Tails Naruto and also sort of give it back with his own AP high level attacks, which just further indicates the durability and AP and speed of a highly fatigued Tendo Pain, which is already more impressive than Sasori at his full power ever displayed, observably and empirically. And on top of that, like Shinobi said, while very, very young and green, he's able to nearly take out Hanzo and force him to retreat with his teleportation jutsu, which is very impressive, and later kill him when he becomes the sixth Master Pain later on in the narrative as well. He simply just has the better feats, I would say significantly better feats against significantly better opponents to indicate that he is significantly superior to Sasori, which transitively allows us to imply that someone of Naruto's caliber who's able to do what he does against this fatigued level of Tendo would be more than enough to have the physical stat superiority over the likes of someone of Sasori. Hence, in battle, more than likely he would blitz both, especially if they're both on the ground and start out on the ground, as they would simply just be inferior in terms of physicality, especially in terms of speed and AP. Another thing we'd like to add as a possible win con now in defense of the duo is the poison, Sasori's poison more specifically. Now, keep in mind though, folks, again, they don't have killer intent, so Sasori would have to be mindful of the level of poison that he utilizes to not kill Naruto, because earlier in the video, me and Shinobi were discussing that Sasori is capable of utilizing only a specific amount to leave his victims alive for a specific period of time. An example was Konkuro, when he poisoned him and said, you're going to die in 3 days, right? So he only used enough poison to paralyze him, to leave him suffering for 3 days before his death. So he could do that to poison Naruto and leave him just incapacitated, giving the Akatsuki enough time to extract the tailed beast out of him, right? That's certainly plausible. However, though, now as far as Deidara, he won't use drastic measures either, right? He won't use the nanoscopic bombs because that could kill Naruto, and he won't use C0 as that would literally kill everybody, including his own partner probably. It would shatter all of Konoha. So he can't use that either. So keep that in mind. That's certainly a disadvantage for the two, as they're not trying to simply kill this guy. Now, again, that poison win condition is possible. However, again, due to the physical superiority, he would blitz both. And honestly, if he would have hit Sasori directly, it'd probably shatter the entire puppet body, including the heart, in one shot. I mean, if Sakura was able to do what she did, imagine what someone at the level of AP and speed of Naruto would do. It'd be very detrimental. On top of that, Naruto's durability would be very, very problematic. As we know, when he was combating the Path of Pain, I believe it was the Tendo Pain if I'm not mistaken, he uses one of the chakra rods and he just breaks it like nothing, right? His durability, his hand is durable enough and his AP is high enough to crack it and literally break it in half, right? And these chakra rods are quite powerful. They incapacitate almost everyone that they're penetrated through, right? So that's very impressive. Obviously, he's able to toss multi-ton rhinos into the sky. He can do all kinds of crazy things because of his durability and physicality. So what would be difficult for Sasori to do in theory would be to poison Naruto just enough. Obviously, the cloud poison, the cloud bombs would work, but that could probably poison Naruto too much and kill him. So he couldn't use that more than likely. He would have to use a needle with just enough poison, but that needle might not have enough AP to actually penetrate Naruto's skin. There's a possibility that it might not, and if it can't penetrate his skin, it won't poison him, right? It does have to at least cut him. If it can at least cut him, then it will go into his bloodstream and he will be poisoned. But there's a possibility that's not possible. You could argue with the iron sand perhaps. So that's just a win con we wanted to discuss. But overall, Naruto's physicality is just too much for individuals of either of these guys' caliber, and he would most likely blitz and, if not one shot, then very shortly defeat both. On top of that, the toad summonings would also aid him, right? So let's say Deidara does go airborne, he would simply have the toads and himself throw long distance ninjutsus at this guy until he either exhausts himself or they hit him, right? And if he does get hit by, especially a Rasen Shuriken, he's getting one-shotted, just to be quite frank with that. So while Sasori could possibly win with the poison, there is the theoretical possibility that Kurama realizes that Naruto's near death or about to be in a death scenario, and theoretically Kurama could give chakra and theoretically burn the poison out of Naruto's bloodstream. We know that the Nine-Tails chakra has this ability to burn through things. In fact, Jiraiya describes it as something that actually affects the body of the host directly and actually burns himself physically and like wounds him. So you could argue that his bloodstream is also being affected. So theoretically, you could theorize that the poison is simply just burned out of his bloodstream somehow, and that the Nine-Tails emerges. And if that happens, we all know what happens then, right? If Naruto goes beyond Four Tails, they're absolutely getting demolished. They cannot stand against the physicality, the AP, the speed, nothing. They would get absolutely demolished by Naruto, and at that point, they probably can't even kill that thing, right? That thing is a monster. Even Pain struggled with that, and had to use his Chibaku Tensei to contain it because of the power that it had at that point in time. So
literally,
yeah. All in all, the chances of success for Sasori and Deidara are quite low. Naruto is simply too much for these individuals. It would more than likely defeat them and dispose of them. But what's your thoughts on the Naruto fight here? How do you think it would go?
Nah, yeah, man. Having Game of Bunta there would definitely put work on Deidara, to be honest.
Oh, yeah.
And like you're saying, like, you know, without having the C4 nanoscopic bombs, without having the C3 golem available, he really is like kind of like downscaling himself, because at the end of the day, if his objective isn't reached, then he does all this for no reason, right? So the best Deidara could really hope to do is just kind of cause a distraction. But like you said, with Game of Bunta and the Toad summonings, that would be just enough for Naruto to not deem Deidara as a threat, already considering his like more than adequate scaling above that in the first place.
Yeah.
But yeah, with Sasori, like, the only win con for him really is to like arguably use his Iron Sand to like maybe scratch Naruto and poison him as a result. But the Iron Sand isn't really known for being extremely fast, at least not to the extent Naruto can run, for example.
Yeah.
So it would just be a very like off-guarded, weird situation that maybe could occur if we were to grant him something. But in terms of scaling, we just understand the different hierarchies, if you will, with Seijo and Naruto's performance against Tendo, and Sasori and what he's capable of with like Sonic-like characters, for example. So
yeah, exactly. So essentially, that's what you have for that duo. Now, being generous, we gave them about a 40% chance of success with the entire invasion, meaning capturing Naruto as well successfully. That's being very generous. The parameters would have to be in their favor. The poison needles would have to be enough to bypass Naruto's durability and actually cut him so the poison could enter his bloodstream and incapacitate him. So essentially, they have a chance, but it's slight, and that's mostly because of Naruto's physical superiority to them. So again, that's about the statistical probability that they are successful in this invasion. But up third, we now have Itachi and Kisame. So firstly, well, before we get into the scaling, they would actually be able to successfully enter the leaf, as in part 1 they did, because Itachi had the code to go into the barrier that the detection team keeps up for detection. They could use the code to go in without detection, which is actually very disadvantageous for Konoha, as they could go around looking for Naruto without even being detected. And keep in mind, in this scenario, they do have killer intent. But what do you think about their performance in Phase 1 and their scaling? How do you think this goes and how they scale?
Yeah, man. So yeah, this is where like the contentiousness really starts to dissipate, in my opinion.
Yeah, honestly.
So, you know, Itachi and Kisame goats, right? They're one of the most famous duo from the Akatsuki, and rightfully so. At least you could say the top half of the strongest members in the Akatsuki for sure.
Oh yeah.
It is key to note that Itachi is in fact bloodlusted in this hypothetical matchup, and not going against the Akatsuki's ultimate goal in this scenario. So he would in fact be going after Naruto to capture the Jinchuriki inside and bring it back. So, and like Jay said, he does have the code, like Payne has mentioned in the past, and so entering the Leaf Village would seem almost effortless for these two. So yeah, while being sick, exhausted from tons of chakra consumption in a battle with Sasuke, nearly going blind, he almost effortlessly seals away Orochimaru in his strongest state, being the Hydra Snake form. Orochimaru was arrogant and thought he could take the blow anyways, but obviously it was quickly proven wrong. Orochimaru would scale in a similar ballpark to Tsunade, being another Sannin, of course, and so the Leaf's biggest threat really isn't even a threat considering the context. Itachi, being the mastermind he is going to go after my guy, who isn't there, and Tsunade being the Hokage. Because Itachi is superior to Tsunade would be taken out, Kisame would have a ton of chakra to siphon as a result, and doing so would enable the capture of the leaf to be exponentially easier for the two of them in tandem. Even without this chakra amp, if you will, shinobi like Kakashi and others are not facing off against any one of the two of them alone. And so it would really take Seicho and Naruto at the end of the day to maybe stand a chance against these two in tandem.
Yeah, exactly. So essentially, like Shinobi said, the levels of success for Konoha like greatly diminish here with this duo and beyond in the video. So with Itachi's scaling, like Shinobi already recapitulated, even damn near dead, right, coughing up blood, near the brink of death, he's able to react quite casually to Hydra Snake Orochimaru, which is the strongest ability that Orochimaru contains. Essentially, with us being introduced that this is Sannin plus level, right? He's essentially using pseudo Sage mode to attempt to take Itachi out, coughing blood near the brink of death, and he still casually reacts and disposes of Orochimaru via the Tosuke Blade and superior reactionary speed. He's simply that superior, even near death. Now, in this altercation, he would start out around the same level of power he was at the beginning of the Sasuke fight, not the end. So he would have obviously much more chakra at his disposal. He would have obviously the stamina would be there, the AP, the speed, all that. Only further reinforces that his levels are even significantly higher than Sannin plus level individuals. Significantly. If he's able to do that near death, imagine what he would do if he was going all out bloodlusted. Even stronger than that. So keep that in mind. As far as Kisame, his physicality is immense. Even in base, he's able to go against V1, a V1 Killer Bee. That's his level of physicality starting out. And with Samehada, is capable of siphoning 6 tails level of chakra each time it strikes an opponent, which is a ton of chakra, and is probably enough to one-shot most shinobi who do not contain nearly that level of chakra, as Jinchurikis historically have immense amounts. So people like Kakashi could theoretically be one-shotted by Samehada. That's how much chakra that's how much chakra Samehada could siphon. Not to mention his 1,000 Shark Bomb or whatever it's called, where he can like use that massive scale ninjutsu to absorb chakra, and also the Water Dome if need be, where he could siphon chakra with you just being inside the Water Dome. Essentially, both these guys are far above any shinobi within Konoha at this time. Might Guy's not present, so 8 Gates is out of the question again. There's nothing they could really do against them. Kisame could just physically dominate the entire leaf, to be quite honest, especially if he uses the Water Dome and Itachi decides to just watch from the shadows or something. Itachi could use Tsukuyomi, Genjutsu, Amaterasu, most of Konoha, and incinerate everyone. It'd be absolutely, it would be like lambs to the slaughter for Konoha here. It'd be very, very disadvantageous for them, and they would fall very easily. It would not be a problem for Itachi and Kisame. They would barely break a sweat, honestly, if they really wanted to be thorough. So their chances of success in Phase 1 is extremely high. Tsunade, Kakashi, Shikamaru, Sakura, all of them are just vastly inferior to these individuals and would fall to their hand, implying Naruto would arrive and Konoha would be destroyed, more than likely, with bloodlusted Kisame and Itachi. But now, clearly, we get to Phase 2. With Konoha fallen, Naruto arrives to find most likely many dead, including Kakashi and Tsunade, with him being obviously the last line of defense. So Naruto would have intel of Itachi, having seen him before and knowing of his dangerous genjutsu ability. However, with both Kisame and Itachi combating him, the odds would certainly be against him. Kisame's physicality and hacks would be very problematic for him, and even if Samehada is unable to absorb his Sage Chakra, Kisame could just use his Water Dome or the Shark Bomb ninjutsu to absorb it anyway. As me and Shinobi discussed before the video, that these attacks don't involve sentient beings absorbing chakra like Samehada or like that one Pain did when he tried to absorb the Senjutsu, but rather just inanimate entities that don't have any chakra networks and are simply not even inanimate entities, but simply just inanimate ninjutsu abilities that absorb ninjutsu, that absorb chakra rather, with the chakra not really going anywhere, right? Simply just extracted from their opponent or the victim. So more than likely, in theory, we concluded that Kisame could siphon the Sage Chakra with the Water Dome and or the Shark Bomb ninjutsu, which, if successfully is implemented, Naruto absolutely basically has almost zero chance of winning. If he's in base, he absolutely has no chance. It's a wash at that point. As far as Itachi, with his comparison to Sage Mode Naruto. For the sake of discussion, we did discuss this a little bit. Some people might think it's a little bit contentious, but again, keep in mind, like we said previously, Itachi, near the brink of death, was able to casually dispose of Orochimaru in his Hydra Snake form, and I would argue he's the strongest Sannin, as he is the only one with the ambition and drive to consistently experiment upon himself, which Jiraiya and Tsunade don't do, implying he more than likely is the strongest of the opponents. So keep that in mind. And that's him again. That's Itachi near death, implying that more stamina, more chakra, more AP, speed, etc. He's significantly above that, right? He's not coughing blood. He's not almost falling over. He would be relatively unscathed from Phase 1. He could arguably not do anything and let Kisame destroy everyone in Phase 1 if need be. So his perception speed would be simply too much. At the bare minimum, his perception speed would be too much for Sage Mode Naruto, as again, perception speed is, in general, significantly higher than physical speed in the Naruto verse. A good example is Tobirama, when he's able to successfully perceive Jubito blitzing him physically enough to implement and utilize a Flying Rising Sail on Obito's armpit, right? So physically he was blitzed. He's nowhere near that speed. Sorry, Tobirama fans, but his perception speed was enough for him to use his neurotransmitters and fire the command to his body, or rather his chakra network, to utilize a Flying Rising Seal, right? So if that gap is that wide from perception to physical speed, it's very easy to deduce that a less disheveled Itachi would certainly have the perception speed to Genjutsu Naruto in Sage Mode. And if Sasuke is capable of severing the link temporarily of a Jinchuriki, it is more than fathomable to conclude that Itachi could very easily do the same and incapacitate Naruto without killing him, as with Tsukuyomi specifically, he's able to utilize as much damage as he needs or deems necessary, where he could just simply torture him and make him go unconscious, and Kurama would not be a factor whatsoever. So we don't even need to mention the Nine Tails emerging here. So simply put, Naruto basically has no chance. No chance at all. It'd have to be a very, very unlikely scenario, almost impossible, like him hitting each one with a Rasen Shuriken. They simply have physicality above his own, and they would simply dodge it, or would be absorbed by Kisame's abilities. Simply put, more than likely he falls, and more than likely this duo succeeds. In fact, we think the chances of success for them in this invasion is over 95%. And overall, they're simply way too high of a caliber and way too dominant for Konoha and even Sage Mode Naruto. But what do you think about Phase 2 and how that would go, and what their chances of success are in this invasion overall?
Yeah, so you know what makes this kind of ironic is, you know how with Pain originally, like, you know, combating the Leaf Shinobi and the Chaotic Shimmer Tensei, like, made him more fatigued as a result, but with Kisame, like, battling Tsunade, siphoning everyone's chakra, and destroying the Leaf actually makes him stronger than he was initially.
Yeah.
And so him alone is quite a massive threat. We see him with enough chakra, of course, and the water dome out. He can maneuver faster than V2 Killer B, for example. Sage Mode Naruto doesn't pale in comparison to the speed quite yet until KCM, right? Yeah, exactly. So with such a discrepancy in speeds, Kisame could siphon his chakra, like Jay illustrated with the Water Dome or Thousand Water Shark Jutsu. They are not a living vessel, and it's kind of like a Giga Drain or like Leech Life from Pokemon low-key. It's like it's like an innate jutsu that doesn't really affect the user per se. So, in my opinion, Kisame having the ant from the village and all of its members being siphoned alone would be quite problematic for Naruto in terms of just tangible stats. And then having Itachi just in the background ready to Tsukuyomi you at any given instance, it's just really hard to see Naruto stand a chance against these shinobi in the first place, considering the caliber they are. Itachi nonchalantly dealing with the Sannin Plus member, and Kisame dealing with, the 8-Tails and Jerky with enough chakra, of course. But nonetheless, even going against V1 Killer B, Kisame and Itachi just in tandem, it's just way too overwhelming for Naruto.
Yeah, exactly. So overall, their chances of success is extremely, extremely high, and they probably succeed and take Naruto back to the village and the Akatsuki plans continue on. So there you guys have it for that one. Finally, we have Obito and Zetsu attempting Pain's invasion. Now, for formality reasons, I have Zetsu with Obito. He's not really needed here, and you guys obviously kind of can already conclude why, and you'll see why very shortly. He's not really needed here, but he's here. So like Itachi and Kisame, they would be able to successfully infiltrate the leaf undetected thanks to Obito using Kamui to enter the leaf, and even Zetsu having this sort of like phasing ability where he can go to and from areas like he did in the Five Kage Summit, where he came out of the ground, like phased out of the ground and like threatened the Raikage and stuff. So both of them can enter undetected if need be, which would be very advantageous for them. They would be looking for Naruto, right? They come into the Konoha looking for Naruto. They'd probably split up, go around. Eventually, they would be detected. Someone would tell someone else, and eventually the whole leaf would be aware of their presence, to be fair. And at that point, Obito would have all of Konoha upon him, right? Kakashi, Tsunade, etc. However, Obito, as young as 14, now getting into his scaling, displays speeds relative to the 4th Hokage Minato, where even Minato admitted that the battle would come down to the wire due to the opponent in front of him, i.e. Obito. As a matter of fact, during the Pain Arc event in the narrative, Obito is perhaps the strongest shinobi on Earth, having the Kamui and a level of speed that makes him seem untouchable to everyone he ever encounters not named Minato up until that point in time. He's actually pretty much untouchable to everyone up until the war arc, if we're being honest. Even in the Five Kage Summit, Kages, all the Kages of the greatest nations were staring at him, unable to do a damn thing against him. He literally sat there, told him his plan, and there's nothing any of them could do against him. They didn't even try it. They deemed him as too superior. That's how superior Obito is at this point in time. He is, again, perhaps the strongest shinobi on Earth that's alive at the time. Just to give you a perspective of how powerful this guy is. And again, mostly because of his Kamui and his speed. He's just untouchable. You can't beat what you can't hit, right? So that's essentially what we have with him. Now, essentially, in Konoha, you'd have a ton of shinobi simply not being able to hit the guy. They would all come at him. Tsunade would try to blitz him. Kakashi would try to blitz him. And they just wouldn't be able to hit him. Zetsu would be support. You could possibly aid him if he does get hit with regenerative capabilities, with Hashirama cells, and maybe even enhance his AP with Wood Style, things of that nature. But honestly, I don't think that would even be needed. All he would have to do is just Kamui everyone, or just take everybody out. It would be very, very easy for him. Worst case scenario, let's say Kakashi for some reason does snipe him, for whatever reason. Let's say he gets caught off guard or something. It wouldn't matter anyway. He would just Kamui himself back. He would just Kamui himself back from the dimension he has full control of anyway. So it wouldn't really matter if he gets Kamui'd. So that isn't even a win condition for them. So simply put, his chances of success in Phase 1 is near definitive. There's really nothing they can do. They can't touch him. They can't hurt him. So how can they possibly defeat him? Right? So he would have his way and kill who he needs to kill and get rid of who he needs to get rid of. It would be that simple. It would be that easy for him. But what's your thoughts on Obito in Phase 1 here? How do you think he does here in his scaling as well?
Yeah, so I completely agree with you on this one, man. This is actually a lot more easy to ascertain the outcome than all the other Akatsuki members mentioned so far, to be honest. Like you said, at the age of 14, he's able to engage upon a battle of inches with Hokage Minato. And that's pretty insane. We know Minato is relativistic to light speed, and shinobi in this verse aren't usually able to contend with such speeds until later in the series, like the Five Kage Summit with the Raikage. Kisame Naruto, for example, doesn't get these kind of speeds until he gets that said transformation. It is then and only then does the speed get mentioned on multiple occasions to be like that of his father, Minato. So as we both said, this is a 14-year-old Obito, and is the most rational conclusion to come to that he has grown since then. To be the actual mastermind and leader of the Akatsuki requires the prerequisites to take the mantle in the first place. Obito could easily enter the village inconspicuously using Kamui, alongside Zetsu, who would also act as a perfect partner to do some reconnaissance, and also as his own pseudo Kamui, if you will, as well. Eventually they would find out Naruto isn't in the village, and if they decided to, Obito could Kamui everyone away. He could use his Kamui to dodge any blows thrown at him, and even when Naruto does show up, as demonstrated earlier, Seijo Naruto doesn't compare to KCM1 at all, and Obito at 14 could contend with KCM1 speed, so at this current iteration, Orange Mask Obito, Seijo Naruto would have no chance. And something else to take note of, is Obito does have a feat using his Genjutsu on Yagura, who was the perfect Jinchuriki for the Three Tails, I believe. He was able to use Yagura as a subordinate for years on end, long enough for the Mist Village to be dubbed the Blood Mist Village because of his hypnotized tyranny, if you will. So, in short, his mastery of Kamui compared with his insane speeds, impressive Genjutsu, Obito wouldn't really need to exert much effort in all to capture Naruto at the end of the day.
So going on to phase 2, like Shinobi has, so obviously Naruto would make his appearance, most likely coming to find out that Obito somehow got rid of many Leaf Shinobi and killed many others. In this altercation, Obito, like in phase 1, would simply be too fast for stage 1 Naruto, being able to most likely reach KCM1 levels of speed himself again, with his performance at 14 years old against Minato, with him most likely being superior in this iteration. Now, I had to add, for those that say Sage Mode Naruto has faster reaction times and is generally faster than KCM1 Naruto, a debunk here, because I think it's definitely relevant, as many people will bring this up. I would actually deduce that Naruto, when making this infamous statement, was talking about in relation to his base form rather than KCM, as he was in base prior to going Sage Mode when attempting to defeat the third Raikage, and also wasn't able to go KCM due to the fatigue that kicked in when attempting to use a Biju Bomb for the first time against the third Raikage. So not only was he not in KCM, but he was unable to utilize it when attempting to defeat the third Raikage. And also to further reinforce why Sage Mode isn't faster, even in reaction times to KCM1, with proof via contradiction, Naruto defaults to KCM1 when combating the fourth Raikage. And the reason this is proof via contradiction, if Sage Mode were to be faster than KCM1, then by default he would obviously deduce that Sage Mode would be more advantageous than KCM1. So again, using the claim that Sage Mode Naruto is faster than KCM1, even in a reactionary aspect, is contradicted via the very narrative itself. Again, with Naruto combating the most prominent of opponents with KCM, which include again the fourth Raikage, Obito, Madara, etc. Right? So again, via proof by contradiction, that claim does not hold and is negated. Hence, the most rational conclusion is KCM is a superior speed amplifier in comparison to Sage Mode, indicating Obito would be too fast in both reaction and physical speed for this current iteration of Naruto to handle. Even in the worst case scenario, let's say Obito is unable to actually damage Sage Mode Naruto as he possesses no high AP abilities observably, he would simply just need to outlast Naruto, which would be easy with Naruto simply not being able to touch him anyways. Or he could simply BFR him and send him to the Kamui dimension and just leave him there. So simply put, Obito, regardless of whether or not he could actually physically dominate him via physical beating, he wouldn't even need to anyway, because he could just outlast him and wait for the Senjutsu to deplete, because at that point Naruto could only use about 2 or 3 clones, if I remember correctly, for replenishment, and that's only about 10 minutes or something like that, so it would be no problem for him to just evade until that time runs out. Simply put, the chances of success for Obito due to his superiority are honestly 99+%. There's just essentially nothing that Konoha nor Naruto could do to defeat him. The only possible scenario for being in defense of Konoha and Naruto would be Talk no Jutsu. They somehow get into his head, let's say for example Kakashi does in phase 1, or Naruto does when he arrives and says, hey, I'm you or whatever, and he has the same sort of mental nerf that he does in the war, then perhaps he gets mentally nerfed and he shakes Naruto's hand and it ends the same way the Pain arc did. That's very unlikely to me at this point in time, because the parameters would not be the same. Right, in phase 1, Naruto wasn't present. Only Kakashi would be present here, and Kakashi doesn't have the caliber that he does here, so he wouldn't be able to press Obito nearly as much, again, with Naruto not being there either. And then in phase 2, Kakashi would be dead, and Naruto would probably be less willing to talk, because like he was in the Pain arc, he was very, very bloodlusted because he found out of Kakashi's death and Konoha's destruction. So the chances of him attempting to talk no Jutsu Obito would be less than it was in the war arc, in the original narrative. So again, besides that win condition, which is very unlikely, Obito is going to successfully capture Naruto. And again, the chances of success are beyond, are 99%, or possibly even higher. But yeah, what are your conclusions to this overall, to the phase 2 and to this invasion for Obito?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, as we've said earlier, Zetsu isn't really doing anything. And he doesn't need to. I mean, Obito is just so much more superior than Naruto is at this current iteration in the series. As we've demonstrated earlier, And as self-admitted by Naruto himself, even KCM1 is just a better transformation overall than Sage Mode. And even having that transformation, it's not enough adequate speed to even fare against Obito in the first place. So,
Yeah.
that being said, Sage Mode Naruto is just susceptible towards Genjutsu, towards being BFR with the Kamui, and Obito, like Jay said, doesn't necessarily need AP to subdue Naruto at the end of the day because he does have the required intangibles to take him out with little effort, to be honest. Like we're saying, 99% isn't something that is unfathomable for someone at such a high caliber such as Obito. So I agree completely. It's unfortunately a wash.
Yeah,
in this
exactly.
case.
It's just not really good. It doesn't look really good for Naruto nor Konoha here. And there you guys have it, folks. That is our breakdown of how each Akatsuki duo would do if they were to attempt Pain's invasion. Feel free to let us know your thoughts on our analysis and in general on this topic, as there are admittedly a plethora of variables involved to analyze this sort of topic for each hypothetical, with us trying our best to be calculated and pinpoint how each hypothetical would go, more or less. Anyways, we hope you folks enjoy, and we'll see you in the next video. Stay classy, folks.
Hello, guys.